Hi, everyone. This is the interaction meeting for the Young Member Group Support Committee. My name is Eric McElrath. I took over as chair of the committee just a couple months ago and will be around for a while, I think. The Young Member Group Support Committee. Our mission statement, the Young Member Group Support Committee facilitates the formation, growth, and success of NCSEA member organization young member groups through collaboration, support, and outreach in an effort to transition students and young engineers into successful professional engineers and future leaders of the structural engineering profession. I took some time a couple months ago when I took over to think about what I think a successful YMG support committee is, and I just threw some words down. I think if we are known, trusted, informed, and enduring, that is something that would make us successful. Last year, our accomplishments, we awarded 4 YMG Summit Scholarships and 5 YMG of the Year finalist prizes, all of which included free registration to the 2020 Virtual Summit. We hosted virtual events, the annual YMG Trivia Night, something that has been a very popular event over the last 3 or 4 years. We also hosted a virtual Summit Awards banquet. Along the same lines, we promoted virtual events of member organization YMGs. And I think in even Minnesota's case, we co-hosted it. With Mincy, the first year of their career event, that had quite a few attendees at it. In fact, at least 20 or 30 attendees were from the YMG in New Zealand. And then we also promoted CMAS's SEE PE test prep event. And we continued our YMG liaison program. Goals for this year, I'd like to transition to Basecamp for YMG communication and registration. This is something I'm not, even though I am the chair of a young member group support committee, I'm not very savvy at social media. And so here I am taking cues from Leo on social media. And I think this is a good step for us, both to encourage more interaction among YMGs and YMG leaders, and to try and stay on top of our registration, which is something we've fallen behind on. Along those same lines, we'd like to update the website. I know that the website is pretty far behind. I know that this map has been something that's been updated over the years, but I think this specific version of the map has been here for a couple years, and I know down here on the bottom of that graphic is a big long list of everyone who is in charge of their YMGs, and I think this is a couple years behind, so I'd like to catch that back up this year. We'd like to provide networking opportunities for young members to interact with others outside of their own YMG. The big one that has been a success the last couple of years has been the trivia night, but I'd also be interested in hosting some small informal networking gathering nights so that people can interact with others around the country and have some networking opportunities with those that are outside of the YMG. We want to provide direct support for emerging YMGs. There are 2 on our radar that we know of right now. The Structural Engineers Association of Southern Nevada, we've been in communication with, and then just a couple months ago, right around when I took over, the SEA of New Mexico has talked about hopefully starting a YMG. And then providing support for the annual NCSEA Summit. This is something that the support committee has done for a number of years. We do a banquet to present the awards. Those awards have previously mentioned are the Summit Awards to encourage young member attendance at the Summit, and the YMG of the Year Award, which both encourages membership or attendance at the Summit and encourages active YMGs. So here I am. I've turned on my video and even given you a pretty picture, albeit already old picture of myself. Ask me some questions. Do you have any questions about what we do, what we can do, and what we're trying to do?
Eric, this is Emily from Seonk. I'm going to put my young member group chair, Megan, who's on the call, on the spot a little bit. But our YMG, we call it YMF, has been spectacularly successful with moving their events to virtual, including just fantastic trivia and socials. And I guess I would ask, is there a way that Seonk can help? Sorry, Megan. The other SEAs who are looking for young member activities, could we invite another SEA to play a trivia night against us? Can we, somehow take what we've created in Northern California and make that more widely available on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, that's something I'd never thought of. We did it by necessity because we needed to do more virtual events. But I think now that we are all experts in it, we should take advantage of the things that it can provide us that we can't otherwise take advantage of with in-person events. And I think sharing those events across the country is a really good idea.
Yeah, just to add to what Emily was saying, we actually hosted an event with the Southern California chapter, so CIOSC, and that was the first time we had done that. I think that was back in January, but the virtual environment allowed us to do something that we typically don't do. We try to collaborate with our local ASCE chapter here often, but it was great to, get their input and meet some new people as well. So definitely doable. And I think as we move forward and figure out, hybrid events and everything, it'll be a cool opportunity.
Great. Megan, what kind of event was that?
We ended up doing a trivia. Sorry, no, we typically do trivia for our own local events here. We ended up doing Pictionary on Scriblio, I believe is the platform. And it was online, and we were all split up into little breakout rooms on teams and played against each other within that. And the folks on my committee who were planning the event kind of set up a bracket system. So you moved forward if you won the round in your room and played against the winners from the other room. So it was really fun. And even when we weren't playing, it was nice to just chat with the other folks in our breakout rooms as well.
Oh, that's great.
Hey, Dave Horos, you wrote a note in the chat. Would you be willing to verbalize that for the group and allow
Sure.
Eric? Thank you.
Yeah, Eric, I'm aware of the MNCE event from previous discussions, but I wasn't aware of the specifics of the topic related to the first year of your career. And that seems like a topic that would be something that's transferable to many of the different SEAs and YMGs. And I wonder if that's been discussed with the folks in Minnesota. And if not, is there a way that we can make available information on that event, how it was structured, topics, agendas, etc., that maybe some of the other SEA YMGs could consider doing something similar, because it does seem like quite an interesting kind of take on things.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to co-host that one, just to try and get others involved. I think there were 2 or 3, maybe 4 attendees on that event from other YMGs, and so they got firsthand experience of what that was built like. But we also have a recording of the seminar so that we can present, or anyone who wants that information, we can provide that. Essentially, it was, I think, 3 or so, 15-20 minute presentations. I know one of them was on communication. One of them was on effective use of software, computer software. And the last one is on, I think he titled it The Balancing Act, work, life, management, technical, just kind of approaching how do you balance these things as a young engineer.
Were they all put on by people who basically just finished their first year of their career?
No, these would be people who were on the board of the YMG in Minnesota. So probably people who have 4 to 5 years of experience, I think.
Okay. Great.
Originally, when we did it, there was another seminar that I think they've dropped since then, but it was put on by a partner of a firm, and he titled it How to Make Your Boss Like You. So it was an interesting approach, but since then they've started doing, I think when Minnesota first did this, they did it in a public event and invited people. Since then, they've been in contact with the university, and they do it as part of the capstone class, which the Basic Education Committee has recommended as a really effective way to get in contact with universities, is kind of working with the capstones, because it's almost like it is required for people to attend that class. And so getting the SEA in front of them in that capstone is a good approach.
Jeanette, I noticed you also asked a question. Would you be willing to verbalize yours and allow for discussion too?
Sure. So we have a young members group in Colorado, and I know you issued like the young member group like startup guide and those sorts of things. I'm just curious about what it looks like for different regions of the country. Like I know for the conference, there's an age limit, right, for when you apply for the young member scholarship. I was curious if other states have age limits on their young member groups. Colorado does not. It's a, do you feel young? Sort of criteria. Are there distinctions in different SEAs that limit involvement in any way? Do you have different membership categories or criteria? For example, we don't allow non-licensed engineers to be voting members of our organization. They're affiliate members, and that has caused some friction with some of our younger members and them feeling underrepresented and disengaged. Yeah, so just questions around that. How are people doing things, and what are the common issues that the young members are trying to get their boards to hear?
I don't know the answer of how everyone is doing it. I can only speak from firsthand experience on how we approached it when I was part of a YMG. I think the 35 and younger is a good way to approach it for NCSEA, just because of the financial benefits of attending the summit. But in Minnesota, just to try and get people involved, we did the same thing as you in Colorado. We said everyone is welcome to attend events. We're going to specifically program our events to try and make it most interesting, probably for young members, and most beneficial for young members. But everyone was allowed to attend. Some people had a little bit of concerns with that, just because a lot of people felt like young members needed a place away from more senior colleagues to be able to vent or talk about challenges that they wouldn't be comfortable talking around colleagues. It didn't seem like that was the primary use to me of a YMG. I think networking and in tandem with networking, you could use that to vent and do that stuff. But I don't think there necessarily needs to be a safe space created by the YMG. I think it kind of turns itself into that as long as you're programming for that. I think there are probably some other people on this call who have experience around the country. If anyone else has experience in what Jeanette is asking about, would you be willing to speak up?
In Northern California, we technically have the 35 and under kind of limit, but I think since I've been involved with YMF, it's kind of naturally just been that, and I think even more so kind of 28 and younger, kind of where everyone leans. But our events are open, and if we're opening an event up to the larger membership, we make it a point to say that, or we co-host with whoever and have more open events and things, but no set. There isn't a rule per se.
I'll say, having attended some events in Illinois and definitely not being of the criteria, that what I see, and Stephanie or David might be able to correct me, what I see is events that are hosted and or organized by the YMG, which probably then attract more of the YMG people, but being open to everyone, and therefore others do join in.
Jeanette, I was interested when you said at SEAC, young members without license aren't voting. We have the same in Northern California. And I don't know if I'm just blind to it, but I don't know that we've heard complaints about that or that it leads to disengagement. And so Megan, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Is that something as a young member group, you guys have felt left out, disconnected, that it's a barrier to participation since you're not a voting member?
It hasn't come up, so I don't think we've felt it firsthand, at least. I guess maybe those people are just disengaged if they are upset about that. But yeah, it hasn't come up in our meetings or anything, or in events or anything.
And in California, we can get our PE license after 1 year with a master's. And so maybe there's a shorter time. In Colorado, it's the 3 with a master's. And so you can be a member for much longer before getting your voting rights.
That's interesting. I'm not sure how Colorado's set up, but in the SEA I'm familiar with, there are only 2 voting members per firm. It's a firm-based membership. It's not an individual membership to the SEA. And so there are a lot of PEs and a lot of people that don't have immediate representation. It's more a group-based representation. So I haven't heard that complaint either. The thought that I have, though, is as far as young members becoming involved with the board and being in leadership positions with the board, I think that's probably one of the most powerful advantages to MOs to have a YMG, is to get more young members involved with both the MO and the board. And we've definitely seen that happen. I think maybe 3 of the last 5 presidents of our SEA have come directly from the YMG board. So perhaps it's longer than they want to wait, but active participation in the YMG and the YMG committee will hopefully lead to what they're looking for, in my opinion.
We've been fairly successful in Southern California. Sorry, Isabel. In bridging, our young member group bridges our student chapters to our voting members, if we want to make that distinction. And it's really kind of a powerful thing, because Eric, you're right. It's that transition where we're able to capitalize on the connection of a young member to the college campuses because they relate better than somebody like me. And then bringing that student in, becoming a young member, young professional. What we have, I think within what we call it, it's a associate membership designation until you're licensed. So as an associate member, you're fully engaged, you're active in the committees, you're developing that background and so forth, and then moving into further and further opportunities for leadership. It's a great transition that starts all the way in the college chapter.
Eric, I'm not sure if there's other YMG chairs here, but if they are, I'd love to hear what's their like #1 event or their tried and true success within their SEA.
I see some names I recognize. Isabella has definitely led her group. Jonathan just came aboard, and so maybe he didn't hear your question, but Jonathan, what we're talking about is if you can speak about your most successful group or event, perhaps something that you do annually or even more common, so that others can take advantage of that.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Let me start this. Yeah, so I'm the co-chair for the Young Engineers Committee for the SCA of Illinois. The first thing that comes to mind for that question, I think, would be our Young Engineer Symposium that we have been doing annually for the last, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years now. It's become definitely one of our most successful events. We send out a call for abstracts, and we have maybe 5 or 6 young engineers submit projects or presentations that they were involved in and that they want to share with their peers. When we were doing, so pre-COVID, we would hold this in person, and we would have a great showing. It would start off with a networking event. We'd have some snacks and beverages, and it would be a great opportunity to meet our fellow young engineer peers. And then the following hour and a half or so is followed by 5 15-minute presentations where we get to see all the cool stuff that our peers are working on. And then I guess just to close that, we were able to successfully transfer that over virtually for this year. We always hold it in January, and that was actually our best showing yet. So moving forward, we might end up doing some type of hybrid, hybrid event where we meet in person, but can also allow people to stream in virtually.
Hey, Eric, this is Isabella from Hi, everyone. I guess, Jonathan, you might be our go-to guy if we have some more questions about the symposium. We have been trying to put something together for the young member groups. And it's great to hear that you have been able to transition to the virtual world and to be able to inspire other groups to do this. So we will keep that in mind. And talking about Oklahoma, how we have been doing things in here. Lately, it has been a struggle for us. We have a leadership issue trying to get new members to get the position as a chair, like any other in other states. But before we had that situation, I actually wanted to make the chair of the young member groups. We had 2 in Oklahoma, 1 in Eastern Chapter, 1 in Central. I want them to be part of the voting members, and that way they can get a better representation and voice in Oklahoma. And I think I have one of my delegates, our delegates in the call too, and you can correct me, Chris. I have been trying this for a long time just because that will give them more ownership of what they're doing, since they also get money from our budgets just to do their activities. The current position that I have right now is like an advisory position for the young member groups as well, and the past president of the central chapter, that gives the example that I started as a young member, became a chair of the young member group, then I started participating closely with the board, and I became president, vice president, president, now past president. And I think that's what other MOs are trying to get, these young members to transition into all those positions and get new blood into the leadership.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I thought.
That's great. Thanks, Isabella. And thank you, Jonathan. It's about 1 minute to 10. I know that there's a education chat session titled Reaching the Next Generation. So I imagine most of the people are interested in attending that. I will probably switch over to there. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask now. I'll hang out for a little bit, or reach out to me directly.
I'm going to plant a seed that we're not going to have time to address today, but is there a difference between a young member committee that is part of the large MO organization and a young member group or young member forum that operates, it sounds like, somewhat separately? And is there a need, or is there an opportunity to make sure that I think Isabella just talked about funding somewhat separately from the MO funding for the young member group. I struggle with, isn't it the responsibility of the MO, the larger body, whatever that larger body we want to call it, isn't it the responsibility of that group to make sure that the young members of the large group are well supported and well funded, and not rely on them to self-fund or self-manage? It's a huge, big question, but I'd love to be able to come back and talk about how do we make sure that the young member forums or groups are fully embedded in and supported by our MOs, rather than feeling like they are somewhat separate.
Well, in Oklahoma, the MO does, we have them on the budget, so they are well funded. Usually in the last couple of years, they haven't used the entire budget for them, which is $1,000 for each of the groups. I think is on terms of, for me, want them to be more involved and be better represented and put in as a voting member. It's just like a way to create accountability.
Right.
And for them to get used to, then they are part of the board, they have a voice, and encourage them to be more involved with that portion of leadership.
Yeah, I think, Ken, it's a really good question. I think it's important. I think it's critical for MOs to support and fund YMGs. I think it's also critical that they do not have control over the YMG, because I think the most successful YMGs are those who are doing what they want for themselves. One recommendation that I gave to kind of a YMG that wasn't able to sustain very well was be selfish. Do for you and your group what you want, what your members want. I think what they were doing at the time was trying to reach out to students, and they felt responsible to present themselves to the students. But they were having a hard time getting volunteers interested in doing that. And what I have found is if you have a strong YMG and a group of people who really enjoy being part of it, eventually you will be able to reach out to the students and support that kind of thing. But in my opinion, I think the most important thing for a YMG is kind of a place for these young members, young professionals, to both meet and develop independent of the MO. If you do have a young member committee that's part of your MO, I would just, my thought is make sure that there's a purpose for that, and it's not just something that's separate. Otherwise, we might have the same kind of feelings that Jeanette was bringing up. Is, well, why is there a young member committee on the MO, and why can't we just be part of the MO? I think those are my thoughts on that.
Okay. That's great feedback, and trying to make sure that as we're working together, we're working together for a common purpose and a common goal that serves the mission of the profession as served by young members, middle members, seasoned members, whatever that membership body is, making sure that we're all driving in a relatively same direction, but serving specific needs of the different groups to get there. But
Yeah.
like I said, I knew that planting the seed of that conversation would take much longer than we have to really discuss it. But it's always been one of those things that I've been trying to understand as the gray-haired leader of a group in Southern California, as to how to make sure that we're not getting in the way, but yet we are also making sure that our missions are aligned.
Yeah. I always knew that the YMG that I was a part of started so that young members, young blood could be fed into the MO. And I never really understood in the early years how to actually make that happen. But I think it just happens naturally. The important thing is having a place for young members to go. And not feel terrified. And being around other young members is an easy way to do that.
Right.
And like I said, I think it just naturally happens. Had I not moved away from Minnesota, I would be part of the board there. And now it's kind of a weird thing, but now I live in Montana and I work in Minnesota.
Eric, before I drop, I just want to make sure that maybe you or Leo captured Stephanie's idea in the chat about creating a base camp group for the chairs of young members, or maybe all young members. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So just wanted to make sure we didn't shut the meeting and lose that comment.
Yep, I did see that. Sorry, I didn't address that or respond to it. It has started already. We just haven't invited people yet. It will be hopefully happening here in the next month or two.
Thank
If
you,
you'll
Eric.
excuse me, I think I am going to jump. Eric, thanks so much for all you're doing.
Thanks for attending, everyone.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.